All right, I think it's there. So, class, Radioland, we're all here. It's good to see you. And we're at 12.1 of the Navigatio. And Jamie is going to fill in at the last minute to translate. Take it away.
Okay. Igitur Sanctus Pater cum sua familia per oceani e quora huc atque illuc agitabatur per 3 menses. Therefore the Holy Father, or then really, the Holy Father with his household through the expanses of the ocean floated or drifted this way and that way, or were tossed. That's a good way.
Yeah, that's good.
Tossed this way and that way for 3 months. Nicil poterant videre, they could see nothing nisi celum et mare except the sky and the sea. Reficiabantur semper per biduum aut triduum. And they ate every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, good.
Quaram vero die, but on a certain day, apparuit illis insula non longe, an island appeared to them not far away, et cum propinquasent ad litus, and when they had drawn near to the shore, traxit illos ventus a portu. The wind drew them to the harbor?
It's
Well,
not
away from the harbor.
Right.
That's right. That makes a lot more sense with what follows.
Right.
Et ita per quadraginta dies navigabant per insulae circuitum, and thus for 40 days they were sailing around the island circularly, or in circles, nec poterant portum invenire, and they couldn't get into the harbor.
Good. Yes. Bruce, a while ago, corrected me a note on the per insulae circuitum. I think suggesting really it should just be per with circuitum, which is what you'd expect, accusative, through the circuit of the island, which makes perfect sense. I made it much more complicated. Good. You want to keep going?
Sure, yes. Fratres vero qui in navi errant, but the brothers, or so the brothers who were in the ship, ceperunt dominum deprecari, began to pray to the Lord, or to ask the Lord, cum fletu, with weeping, ut illis adjutorium prestaret, that he would lend them aid.
Good.
Vires enim illorum praenimia latitudine pene defecerant, for their strength was almost exhausted on account of excessive weakness.
Good.
Good, and you got vires, which is tricky because it's that vir and vis. We've had that mix up before.
Cum autem permansisent in crebris orationibus, but when they had remained in frequent prayers, et in abstentia, and in fasting per triduum for 3 days, apparuit illis portus angustus, a narrow harbor appeared to them, tantum unius navis receptio, basically equal to the reception of one ship, or capable of receiving one ship.
I'm
not sure what the Latin grammar is there.
I would say receptio is in apposition to what we've just said. A reception of, and then tantum of just one ship, a reception of one ship.
Yeah, I guess that could work.
You know, receptio almost in like a reception area or a reception desk.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In a hotel, just that little area where you come in is only of one ship, meaning big enough for one ship.
Right. Yeah, so you could just say like, and reception was just one ship, right? The width of a ship. Good.
Et apparuerunt illis duo fontes ibidem, and likewise 2 fountains appeared to them, unus turbidus et alter clarus, one muddy and the other clear. Porro fratres festinabant cum vasculis ad hauriendam aquam. So the brothers hurried with vessels, with jars, I guess, or whatever it was they were using to draw water or drink water. Intuens virdei illos ait. The man of God, seeing them, said, Filioli, little sons, little children, nolite peragere illicitam rem. Don't do a forbidden thing. Sine licentia seniorum quien hac insula comorantur, without the permission of the elders or the old men who live on this island, or who stay on this island.
Good.
Tribuent namque vobis has aquas spontanee, for they will give you these waters freely, quas modo vultis furtim bibere, which you on the other hand want to drink stealthily or secretly.
Right, secretly. Good. Good.
Yeah. For
you're not coming through. We can't
like
hear you.
Furtus, meaning just a thief,
yes.
or a theft.
We didn't hear any of that, Bruce.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Furtim, I said, related to furtus, meaning a theft. So hence the something you do. So something you do furtively is something you do, yes, stealthily, but it's as if you're stealing something and trying to get away with it.
Right, like a thief. Good. So in a broader sense, I don't know if we want to talk about the broader issues. One thing that's, again, different scholars and non-scholars especially have lots of opinions about where each of these islands is supposed to be. There does seem to be a certain willingness to accept that this island, the island of Alba, could be identified, at least in the minds of the author, with somewhere like Madeira or one of the Azores. And some of them get very excited. There's one scholar that gets very excited and says, well, we've got the island of St. Michael in the Azores, not only has a teeny tiny harbor, but it's got a mineral spring which would make you sick if you drank it, blah-de-blah, so he gets very excited. Whether or not any of that's useful, I don't know if that's what serious medievalists do, probably not. But I think it is true that we're supposed to think of them not as going steadily in one direction to the west, but certainly at this moment in the story, just bopping around the Atlantic, kind of lost in the Atlantic and then turning up somewhere on the island of Elba, which could be right off the west coast of Ireland after this huge detour, or it could be in the mind of the author somewhere like Madeira or the Azores. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like it ought to be Elba, but I don't think the geography would hold it all, but the name sounds like it ought to be.
Well, right, but that I think that's one of those. I've always worried about those names that just seem totally arbitrarily the same, like Jura in Switzerland and Jura in the Inner Hebrides. Is one I just came across. I saw a book about the lives of the fathers of Jura, and I said, oh, more Scots and Irish fathers, but no, they're French and Swiss.
Hill people.
So I think Elba, and anyway, Elba is totally the wrong place. So,
I think Elba is just Latin for Irish for Alba. It just means white.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's just an Irishification of the Latin, kind of. So it just sounds like Elba.
No, Elba is a saint.
Mm-hmm.
He's a known Irish saint, right?
Yeah. He's 6th century or something like that.
Right.
Isn't it his name that became Elvis?
Elvis.
I think that's right. Yes.
Yes, it is.
I think Elvis is the Anglicization of it.
Which must be extraordinarily painful to the saint if he's aware of the fact.
Or vice versa.
Moment.
Are we talking Presley or Costello? Okay, I'll shut up.
Nobody thinks about Costello. If you say Elvis, nobody thinks Costello. Right?
Something to keep in mind is that for a long time, people have known how to measure longitude fairly with fairly what we call primitive, but really fairly basic instruments. I don't know if the monks had this, but
you mean latitude?
So I think one of them is they had there was a long time before they figured out how to do it.
That's longitude.
Modern time.
That's longitude.
There's a whole movie about it.
Yeah, the longitude they couldn't calculate accurately until the 18th century. The British government
chronometers. Yeah, they needed accurate chronometers, and chronometers. It was very hard to make a chronometer accurate because of the movement of the ship.
Right.
Well, these guys are a rather small ship anyway, so.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember when the good chronometer was built because the inventor, some finagling caused him to lose the prize that had been offered, but George III was sorry for him and gave him a pension.
Oh, that was nice.
So that tells you when it was.
Yes. No, there's a movie that's surprisly fun to watch about it.
And a book, too, by Deva Sobol, the author. She's a science author.
Yeah.
She's really good, yeah.
She wrote Galileo's Daughter, didn't she?
Sure, that, too.
Yeah.
All right. Presumably, also, there are spiritual overtones to all of this, which are either sort of upfront, in your face, transparent, or I don't understand them. I mean, clearly, there may be something more deep that's going on here, other than don't take stuff until you're invited. But that's as far as I've got. I don't know if Bruce or Karen or any of you guys have a richer spiritual interpretation. If not, let's go. Shall we go on with Victoria at 12.3?
Thereupon, with them descending from the ship and considering to what part they should go, there came to them an old man, ablatives.
Genitive. Nimiae gravitatis.
Okay.
Nimiae, there is nimiae. It's medieval for nimiae.
Presumably age rather than weight.
Yes.
With respect to his hairs shining white, with hair that was shining white, and with a bright face, who prostrated himself on the earth 3 times before he kissed the man of God.
Good. The one slight detail, the second word, ascendentibus, actually literally means ascending from the ship. I mean, of course, we think of getting down from the ship because we think of the ship as being way higher than the land, but they obviously, I mean, these are little teeny, this is a boat, and they just think getting up out of the boat onto the land.
Okay.
Okay?
With disembark.
Disembark, Here we go. Disembarking and considering. But St. Brendan and those who were with him elevated him from the earth, kissing them in turn. He held the old man held the hand of the Sacred Father and went with him almost the space of one stadium to the monastery.
Good. Can we think about that osculantibus autem se in vicem a bit? Don't you think it means, maybe it needs to be more, it could be expressed more fully, but with both of them kissing each other in turn, right? Literally kissing themselves, however, in turn. In other words, each one kissing the other, right? Okay. Jen, you're frowning. Because that's spectacularly obvious, or because?
Yeah, that's absolutely what it should be. Because there's no, there is no each other in Latin.
Right.
So you often see inter se to mean that, but here it's the in vico.
So Jen, there's no better way to say that. It's not like that's a particularly weird way to put it, is it?
No, you can't say each other in Latin.
Right.
So
Okay.
you this is fine.
Okay.
Well, just so I know who's kissing whom, though, those who were with Brendan pull the old man up from the earth, and then kissing is happening. But there are multiple kissings.
Mm-hmm. You're making it sound weirder than it really is. They're just being.
Kiss greetings. I get that, but
okay.
But I mean, there are multiple kisses. Is it meant to be that the old man is kissing the brothers who have just elevated him from the earth?
He kisses all of them, and they all kiss him.
Okay, so the whole. All right.
Probably briefly on the cheek.
It was on the mouth. It was very common. It was a very common form of greeting, especially among monks.
But very chaste and proper.
All on the mouth. That would be gross.
No, John.
So they kiss one another in greeting, and then the old man takes the hand of the Sacred Father. Okay.
Yes.
So that Tunc Sanctus, then Brendan with his brothers stood before the gate of the monastery and said to the old man, "Whose is that monastery, or who is in charge of it? Or whence are those who dwell here? From where do they come?"
Good.
Who dwell, that's good. That's good for Komorari.
Yeah.
And thereafter the Sacred Father, with many different words, interrogated the old man, and never from him was able to get or to accept any response, but so much as he might, I can't get whether quite it's the silence that's insinuating or he's insinuating with great gentleness, silentium,
silence.
through silence or by silence.
No, I think he's we would say demanding silence or indicating the need for silence.
He's putting his finger on his lips or something.
Right. With incredible kindness.
Okay, so I got that wrong, but so much as he insinuated or he gestured for silence with incredible gentleness.
And again, I suspect that part of the problem is that tantum, which can mean so many different things. Might think, for example, that it goes with silentium, but I think it just means he only. So he never he didn't want to accept any answer from anybody, but only indicated silence with an incredible kindness.
Well, I think it's Brendan who didn't get any answer. I mean,
because he kept
Brendan
asking.
Yeah, and he was never able to get, basically, we might say, a single answer. But the guy only did.
So do we think the subject of Insinuabat is the Senex, or do we think it's Brendan?
I think it's Senex. I don't see why Brendan would suddenly, after asking him 50 questions, would suddenly start insinuating silence.
Well, he said,
urging silence.
It's an island of silence. Everybody be quiet.
Yes.
You think it? So you think it's Brendan?
But the butt doesn't seem to.
Okay.
I think it's.
I think it's said tantum. You know, you couldn't get a response out of him, but then somebody will only basically do this.
Okay.
With great gentleness. I think that has to be the Senex sort of indicating by gestures, this is what we do here.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Good.
Okay. So 12:4. But as soon as the Sacred Father recognized the rule or the order, decretum of that place, he admonished his brothers, saying, "Guard your mouths from speech or from words, lest those brothers be polluted through our levity, through our
our jokiness."
Yes, these monks sailing around in a tiny little boat on the Atlantic Ocean, eating practically nothing ever, are such, lighthearted, worldly people.
Right.
But, I would think that if I'd been rowing around an island for 3 days without eating anything, I'd be darn punchy.
So with these forbidding or commanding words, behold, 11 brothers came out to meet them.
I'm sorry, Victoria, before you go on, remember it's passive, interdictes.
With these words having been commanded, having been
forbidden, in other words.
Because they can't talk. Words are forbidden.
With these words having been forbidden.
I'd also suggest that his is actually dative. Words having been forbidden to them.
Oh. Wow.
Okay.
I like that.
What does Jen think?
Yes. That's what I thought.
With words having been forbidden.
Well, that settles it.
Okay. Behold, and that makes that flow better, because after the words have been forbidden to them, behold, 11 brothers came out to meet them with reliquaries and crosses and hymns. And then, words having been forbidden, Decentes saying this verse: arise, saints of God, from your mansions, and pursue the path or the way, go after the way of truth. Okay. The place with holiness, the people with blessing, and then...
I think those might be verb forms, sanctificate, sanctify, and imperative.
Yeah, they're totally.
That's what, sanctify the place, bless the people, but then you come to, and we consider worthy, or we dignify, we consider it worthy to...
That's second plural.
Nos famulos vestros is the object.
Right. Dignomeny is imperative as well, of a deponent verb.
Okay, nos famulos vestros, then I've lost what I was trying to do with that. Your servants?
Right. So deign to guard your servants in peace. Deign to guard us.
Your servants.
Your servant in peace.
We deign to guard your servants in peace.
So
no, it's second person.
You deign to guard us. You deign to guard us, your servants, in peace.
Yes, dignomeny, I think...
Got it, okay.
Is that a second person plural of respect? A plural of,
yes.
They're talking about God.
Sanctify the place, bless your people, and deign to guard your servants in peace. Okay.
And this is technically that dignomeny is a hortatory or an optative subjunctive, right?
Okay. If you say so.
Is it? Aren't they just imperatives? What would be?
Sanctificate and benedicite are imperatives, but dignomeny isn't. It's a subjunctive.
Right. Okay.
I think it means the same thing.
Yeah.
Do this, may you do this.
Just kind of alternates the phrasing a bit.
And it's plural because they are addressing these 11 brothers. They're addressing the sancti.
Oh yes, they're speaking to the saints.
Right.
Whoa, wait, who's speaking to who? The 11 brothers are coming out and saying this verse.
Right.
Yes.
To the sancti Dei.
Saints of God. Okay.
Sorry? Someone said something, I didn't hear it.
I was just making sure it was indeed the 11 brothers who were chanting this verse.
Yes.
the arrival.
Yes, the brothers of the island, right. Right, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so with this aforesaid verse finished, little verse finished, the father of the monastery kissed St. Brendan and his followers in order.
Lots of kissing.
More kissing, yes.
Formal greeting.
And similarly, his family, presumably Brendan's family, kissed the family of the sacred man.
Good.
One little thing. Victoria pointed out that strangely, having just forbidden speech, it says decantes.
Well,
I think that's right, but I think they're actually singing, because everywhere else they sing, and then later on the abbot says, nobody ever speaks around here, they only sing. Why it says decantes, I can't tell you.
Well, I guess that would be the hymnis, with hymns and saying, and you're supposed to understand that that's what they're saying in the hymn, I would suppose.
Yeah, good.
Okay, great. So now John writes that he can't get online from California, so we're on our own. Who else wants to volunteer? Jen, you looked willing. Jen, was that a sign of willingness?
I'll be glad to do any of it.
Visible sign of willingness? Okay. See, that's why we need videos, to see who's willing. Okay. So we're at 12.
Sort of. I mean, a classroom, who's not willing when they stare firmly at their books, right? That's what I always do.
But here, everyone's staring at their screen, so they don't have that option. 12.5. Take it away, Jen.
Okay. With peace, as in the kiss of peace, I think, having been given in turn, they led them into the monastery, just as the custom is in the western parts, to lead the brothers through their prayers. After these things, is this supposed to be Abbas with an S nominative?
Yeah, you find it both ways, because the Hebrew does not have an S.
Okay.
So I think it happens both ways.
Okay. The abbot of the monastery, with his monks, began to wash the feet of the guests and to sing an antiphon, a new order. With these things having been finished, with great silence, he led them to the refectory, and with a signal having been struck, and with their hands having been washed, he had everybody sit down. Again, with a second sign having been struck, one of the brothers of the father of the monastery got up and began to serve the table with breads of miraculous whiteness and with certain roots of incredible taste.
Yes.
And which kind of leaves you wondering what those roots might be, if you're one of those people that likes to guess at the original. I mean, what? Carrots?
Sure. Radishes?
I don't think radishes have an incredible taste at all.
They have a strong taste.
They're weird.
Some of them do.
Incredible than anything else.
But remember, when you've been sailing around the island for 3 days, anything tastes good.
Once again.
40 days.
And these are also people who are super excited about one little roll between two people, so.
Right, they have low standards of gourmet food.
Yeah, if you haven't eaten anything but dried fish and a few, maybe, you'd probably be pretty excited about a turnip.
Yeah.
And that's every 2 or 3 days.
All right, class.
But the brothers were sitting with their guests mixed together. according to rank or in rows, probably in rows. And between each two brothers, always a whole piece of bread was being put.
Mm-hmm.
The same servant, with the signal having been struck, was serving drink to the brothers.
Good. Great.
That mixed him. I don't know if I can justify this grammatically, but I had the impression that that meant the seating chart went islander, guest, islander, guest, islander, guest.
That's what I was.
Is that what mixed him is trying to do there?
Like, because the brothers are all mixed with the guests, so.
Mm-hmm.
That was the impression I received.
Good. It should be Abbas, by the way, in the very first sentence that second sentence that Jen suggested. That's just another misprint. Good, Jen. 12.6.
Okay. Also, the abbot was encouraging the brothers with great cheerfulness, saying, from this spring, which today you wanted to drink out of, which you wanted to drink in a stealthy manner, like a thief. From that one, now, make charity. So I know the note says drink in love. I thought that was very odd. Make dearness of it with pleasantness and fear of God, a fear of the Lord. From the other spring, the
Sorry, can I interrupt on Caritas?
Please.
I think this is actually a monastic technical term that refers to the meal that the monk or nun hosts give to their guests when they arrive. That's called a caritas, and the verb used with it seems to be facere. This you can find this at the beginning of the 7th century. So although he's only referring to water here, I think he's basically saying, make the it's almost like it's a different kind of love feast. It's not an agape, but it's this specific,
make them welcome almost. Would that be a loose, rough translation?
Yeah, but specifically make them welcome by giving them food, by giving them dinner.
Right. Have a feast of love.
I guess I have a Southern mind that's the same thing.
Right. It's not saying hello. It's handing out peanuts and sweet tea.
That's it.
All right. Good.
Okay. So from the other spring, the muddy one, which you saw, the feet of the brothers are washed every day because it is warm at every time.
Good.
But the pieces of bread which you see, it is unknown to us where they are prepared or who carries them to our, is that like a storeroom? So,
yes.
But nevertheless, it is known to us that from the great pity of God, they're served to his servants through some lowly creature.
Good.
Here there are 24 of us brothers. Every day we have 12 pieces of bread for our meal, a single piece of bread for each 2 people.
Good.
I think it may be a little generous, more generous than piece of bread suggests, because panis can also mean loaf of bread.
Yeah. Like a roll.
Yeah, so I think that you sort of get a meal out of that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't mean like a slice. I meant like a hunk of bread.
Hunk of bread.
That's what I was thinking.
Could I ask about subjectum?
Mm-hmm.
I have a note that I was scribbling underneath going nearby adjacent question mark. I was looking at, lowly creature?
Subject creature?
Subject. I mean, I was having a hard time figuring out what that would mean.
Subject in the sense of subjected to. It's some creature, some being, some created thing that is subject, in this case, subject to God. That's bringing the load.
It is an interesting word.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, partly if they knew that if they knew it was a subject creature and a lowly creature, then they'd know what kind of a creature it was, right? But it's mysterious.
Actually, they're probably thinking of like the story of Elijah and the ravens, and so they figure it's probably a lowly creature like the ravens were that fed Elijah. They're probably just drawing a parallel, is what I'm thinking.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah, you don't get lions bringing people food, do you?
No, they only eat people in caves.
Or not.
Yeah, or not.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
So now we're ready to move on to 12.7. I'm still waiting for enlightenment about what the symbolism all symbolizes. Again, it makes perfect sense on the face of it, sharing miraculous food, but one feels that there's more going on here. I just have no idea what that is. 12.7, Jamie.
That's me.
You ready to take it away?
Yeah. In festivitatibus et in dominicis diebus, on feast days and the Lord's days, integros panes singulis fratribus addidit Deus, God adds or supplies a whole piece of bread for each brother, for each one brother, ut cenam habant ex fragmentis, so they can have supper from the leftovers.
That's great.
Modo in adventu vestro, now upon your coming, duplicem annonam habemus, we have a double serving, a double handout. Et ita nutrit nos Christus, and thus Christ nourished us. A tempore Sancti Patricii et Sancte Albae, from the time of St. Patrick and St. Elba, or whatever it's supposed to be. I can't pronounce Gaelic at all. Patris Nostri. Our Father, apparently both of them together make one Father.
No, I think Elba is their father and Patrick isn't.
Oh, so Patrick is just a time marker. In this case, he just shows what era it was, maybe?
Well, actually, wasn't Elba... Elba must have been converted by Patrick.
Maybe. I don't know the legend.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Anyways, okay. Usque modo per octoginta annos, until now, for 80 years. Tamen se nectus aut languor in membris nostris minime amplificatur. But nevertheless, old age or exhaustion grow very little indeed in the parts of our bodies. In hac insula nicil ad comedendum indigemus quod igni paratur. In this island we are in need of nothing to eat which is prepared by fire. Neque frigus, neque estus superat nos umquam. Neither cold nor heat ever overcomes us. Sed cum tempus missarum venit aut vigilarium, but when the time comes of masses or vigils, incenduntur luminaria in nostra ecclesia, the lights in our church are lit, que duximus nobiscum de terra nostra, which we brought with us from our land, divina predestinatione, by divine predestination or foreordination, et ardent usque ad diem, and they burn all the way till day, et non minuitur ullum ex illis luminaribus. And nothing ever diminishes, and it never diminishes at all from those lights. The light never diminishes.
Yes. What is Ullum?
Any of those lights.
Any.
Is it genitive plural?
Or is it just...
No, it's
I think it's neuter.
non ullum ec illis, not one.
Not one of those.
Right.
Of those lights is ever diminished.
Right. It's just the neuter singular of ullus. I don't know why it looks so weird to me.
It has a funny look. It actually looks like it ought to be the name of a saint.
Oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. No,
but it isn't.
And it might be. We can never tell.
Right.
I guess that there ought to be a Saint Ullum.
Illud, but it's not, obviously. Okay.
A couple of things. I didn't want to interrupt Jamie in the middle of her flow. Back there, the minime, neither old age. I don't know if this is true classically, but in medieval Latin, certainly that can just mean known, and I think that's what it means here. Mm-hmm. We don't ever get older or weaker.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like we're taught to say when we want to give a one-word negative answer, like sororem habeas, minime. Do you have a sister?
Right.
No.
No.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing is that ardent usque ad diem. I suspect we're meant to supply a honk or a hunk. This text does dies as both masculine and feminine. They burn to this day. They're still burning.
Oh.
Yeah. See, I was thinking it meant like that they light when it gets dark and they burn through all the night services and only go out in the morning.
Yeah.
And that could be.
But I don't know whether that would be consonant with liturgical practice at the time.
I think you have the. I don't think there's any rule against lighting the lamps in the daytime. I would think. Well, it does depend on what latitude we're at. If we're way up in the North Atlantic, the daytime is very short and a lot of it's dusky, and you may want lamps for almost all the time. If we're in the Azores, you got plenty more bright sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess the question is, does it mean they're still burning to this day 80 years later?
Or does it mean they burn until the next day?
They burn until day, in which case they stop burning because nobody needs them anymore, which is certainly how I took it. But
that's what I thought, because minuitur is present tense, and you would expect it to be maybe past.
Mm-hmm.
And they burn, they're burning, and they do not diminish. So I guess maybe not.
Yeah, but you get a lot of historical presence.
Yeah.
So
and another thing, it says that they light up for the services, basically. So that wouldn't make sense for them to burn all night and not in the day, because they have services part of the night and part of the day. So I'm actually being converted to the idea that they burn to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Although that does suppose an omission in the text.
Right. Well, or an understood.
Right.
Well, I can't. Does ad diem? I'd look for something different for ad diem, meaning and until it gets light, until it's day. That ad diem. I don't know what I'd say. I'd expect instead. It looks funny to me.
Mm-hmm. Ad primam lucem or something like that until dawn.
But if the lamps have been burning since they got there, you wouldn't expect them to say when it's time for Mass or for vigils. You would expect them to say they've just been
the lamps have been burning.
Because that makes it sound like every time they have Mass or every time they have vigils, the lamp
lights up separately.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what happens?
But that is what. The problem is that is what happens.
And if they were always
doesn't
burning,
the bird come in and light all the lamps?
Right. So they're not like lit for 80 years and burning for 80 years. They must be turning on and off.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, let's ponder about that. Jamie, do you want to go on? 12.8?
Yes. Postquam autem biberunt tribus vicibus, However, after they had drunk 3 times, Abbas solito more pulsavit signum, the abbot, after his usual custom, struck the sign, which I think must be rang the bell. It must be a bell. Et fratres unanimiter, and the brothers all together, or of one accord, cum magno silentio et gravitate, with great silence and seriousness, levaverunt sea a mensa, got up from the table antecedentes patres ad ecclesiam, preceding the fathers to the church. Now, the note said this might be a nominative absolute, quote, quote, but I think that antecedentes probably modifies fratres, or probably refers to fratres.
Yeah,
the brothers precede the fathers to the church.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Right.
Because it says that St. Brendan and the father of the monastery come behind them. And they would be, you know, the leaders.
True.
So the less important monks are obviously going first. So, gradiebantur vero post illos, and there proceeded behind them Sanctus Brendanus et praedictus pater monasterii, St. Brendan and the aforementioned father of the monastery. Cum ergo intrasent in ecclesiam, so when they had come into the church, ecce alii duodecim fratres, behold, another 12 brothers exierunt obviam illis, were going out to meet them, basically, or in such a direction as to meet them, flectentes genua cum alacritate, bowing their knees with alacrity, eagerly. Sanctus vero Brendanus, cum illos vidicet, dixit, or so St. Brendan, when he had seen them, said, Abba choristi non refecti sunt nobis cum simul. Abbot, or father, why didn't those guys, you see, those brothers, those men, eat together with us? Qui ait pater, to whom the father said, propter vos, on account of you, quia non potuit nostra mensa omnes nos capere in unum, because our table can't fit us all at once. Modo reficientur, but now they eat, they're refreshed, et nihil illis deerit, and they will not lack anything, except, of course, what everybody lacks, because they're living on bread and water and roots. Nos autem, but they're roots of an incredible flavor.
Hey, how do you know it isn't frosted raisin bread?
I mean birds.
Miracle.
That's true.
They're getting their square meal a day, so I think
it's miraculous bread. I'm sure it's good.
We're in the early Middle Ages here. Somebody gives you bread and clean water and some tasty root vegetables. You're ahead of the game.
The roots are luxury, right? Because they are roots of an incredible flavor. Don't forget that. Nos autem intremus in ecclesiam, but we enter into the church et cantemus vesperas, and sing vespers. Let us.
Right.
Ut fratres nostri, in order that our brothers, qui modo reficiuntur, who now refresh themselves, who now eat, possint ad tempus cantare vesperas post nos, may at the time, or at the proper time, sing vespers after us.
Good.
William?
Yes.
The 4 lines from the bottom, is that Abba also supposed to be Abbas?
That should be I think that's vocative.
Vocative.
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's what Selmer at least prints.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the vocative of Abbas. So, again, actually, this seems to me a really good example of the kind of thing I'm sort of vaguely trying to articulate. Either we're getting these incredible sort of micromanagey detail, right? We're just, here's life on the island, and we're going to devote like half a paragraph to the fact that they had to eat in shifts because with the visitors there wasn't enough space at the table, But that's all very interesting because this is a miraculous island full of monks, so who wouldn't care about every single detail?
Right. Which, especially, sorry.
Sorry, or
finish your distinction.
There's something
meaningful,
spiritual, meaningful, symbolic about this shift, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it shows that they're willing to give up having their dinner at their usual time to provide for the convenience of their guests. So even if it's not, symbolic, it shows spiritually, that these monks are good guys.
Yeah, but that's not
right.
Heroism beyond.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, postponing your meal so that people can find a chair.
Although they do seem to think an awful lot about food for monks.
Well, I know, but delaying a meal is not the kind of act that really gets you immortalized.
Major points. Yeah.
Thought.
I think it is the kind of.
Sorry. I think a problem here is that this isn't entirely fiction. These appear to be based on real voyages made sometime somewhere. So there are some exotic customs being recorded here. We're just not sure where exotic custom ends and biblical exegesis and parables begin.
Right.
But I mean, there is I do believe that Irish society at that time was really big on things like guest right, on being a good host, and so maybe waiting for someone to find their chair is a big deal.
And also, if this was written by a monk himself, which is quite probable, isn't it?
I think it's almost certain, isn't it?
Very, very probable.
Right. Well, then I would think that a monk would be very interested in the customs of other monasteries. Like how when mothers get together, they always talk about, well, what I do is I do the dishes before the kids get up in the morning, and little details of routine that are interesting to the people that do them. So this might be absolutely fascinating if you're a monk.
Okay.
I also think, to follow up on what Paula said, I think this may be a way of indicating that these are exceptionally friendly and hospitable monks. Remember that a few subsections later, Brendan asks rather extraordinarily, well, can we just stay here then? So I think maybe that's some of what's being suggested.
Okay, so it's just they're very friendly. Okay.
Or you can take the number of monks and the number of loaves of bread and the number of guests and play all sorts of numerological significance games, but I wouldn't want to try it myself.
Last Supper or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 Last Suppers and then a last.
I was reading an article about Brendan that makes the point or argues that even the leather boat has symbolic value, and there's a passage in the life of Brendan where he's told you can't get to the promised land in a skin boat because that's the boat of flesh. You need a wooden boat, which is the boat, the boat of, I guess, the cross. I'm not sure, but anyway, so that the skin boat, even the skin boat, which seems so basic to kind of basic historical, let's find real geography in this thing, even the skin boat has been seen as symbolic. So I'm just, as we say, throwing it out there.
It's like they're like the Ark. It's a wooden boat. It's like the Ark.
Yeah, that's true. Right, the wooden boat is like the Ark.
Although, I mean, wood of the cross is very important at the time, and it could easily be a double meaning.
Right. Anyway, I'm not sure he goes into what the wood means, but but certainly the passage is quite compelling about the skin boat having spiritual significance, the skin and flesh, etc. Which of course doesn't mean that they weren't sailing around Ireland in skin boats, because they were. So it's interesting. Anyway, 12.9, Paula?
Okay. But once they completed the debt of the evening, Vespers, St. Brendan began to consider in what way this church was built. It was truly a square, so much in longitude as in latitude, and had 7 windows, 3 before the altar that was in the middle, and 2, I'm guessing Bina actually means a pair.
Yeah, 2,
before
right.
Before the other 2 altars.
Yes, I think the luminaria have to be lamps, not windows.
Well, I was wondering about that, because I thought at first it meant lamps, but I thought, well, I better look this up, because it seems too easy, and it said windows.
Okay.
That is indeed one meaning. But I really think we're talking about the lamps because it would be a little weird to talk about windows in front of 3 windows in front of the middle altar and then 2 windows each.
Windows in front of the altar.
In front of the
Yeah, windows was my first thought. Yeah. It was just when I looked it up in Collins, it just said windows.
Right.
And we've been using luminarium already for the lights that get lit up every morning or whenever it is.
Right. Collins is a basic classical Latin dictionary.
Yeah.
It's not going to have the medieval meanings.
It tends towards
Right.
It's just that when
it's obviously handy. Again, the best thing, I think I say this somewhere, they're both Niemeyer and Lewis and Short you can get online. And it's
I've got Lewis. I was just lazy in using Collins.
Oh, well. Okay. All right, onward.
Okay. Let's see. And the altars were from a crystal square made, and of them small dishes similarly from crystal. That is a paten, it said in the notes, a shallow dish, and cups and jugs. I think it said cruet, and various other vessels which belonged to the divine cult. And there were 24 seats through the circle of the church.
Good.
When I was looking at the position of the altar and the shape of the church, I couldn't help thinking how Eastern Orthodox of him. But it's probably too early for that split.
I don't know if we can infer what the architecture was actually like from this. I can't. I didn't think about it. Whether there's enough information to know what the shape of the church was.
Well, the circuitum makes it sound like a circle.
Right.
And the altar is in the middle. And that sounds like what a modern Eastern Orthodox church would be, which is why I was kind of laughing at it.
Right.
But quadrata makes it sound like it's a
square. Like a square. I know. It's confusing. Maybe a square inside a circle?
Or maybe the chairs are arranged sort of in a circle around the center.
Right.
Yes, it can be circularly without being an actual circle.
Or a circuit without being an actual circuit.
Right. That's better.
I was thinking more of the altar in the middle is nowadays is an Eastern Orthodox feature, and it's not so much in Western churches. But I don't think that distinction existed back then necessarily. Okay.
Per circuitum, wouldn't that just mean that the chairs are going around the church, like it could be squares?
Yeah. I'm not sure how these chairs are set up.
Are they even chairs? Could they be stone?
There's sedilia.
Yeah, but I mean, could they be like stone? I mean, chairs, I think, like wooden chairs or metal chairs or something, but they could, they could be stools, they could be...
I think that's the only word we've got, isn't it?
Yeah. They could be benches.
Sure.
I mean...
They could be benches.
Yeah, that could be benches. That's true. That's true.
It's kind of a vague word, I think.
There's a chapel in the basement of the National Cathedral in Washington, which this description made me think of, because it is, you go downstairs, it's a square room, but the room is sort of rounded on the inside. Has anybody else ever been down?
Karen was married there.
Square?
I don't know if Karen's listening, but she was married there. I think.
In the chapel or in the cathedral?
Well, in the basement of the National Cathedral.
Oh, wow. So anyway, but I think it's supposed to be an ancient-looking chapel, and this sort of reminded me of it. Rows of seats around this kind of circular stone, old-looking space.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Let's move on. We can see if, I don't know if commentators have tried to explain what the architecture would be like. Should we move on to 12.10?
All right. There was even a place where the abbot sat that was, now this was a little confusing because there were two erots, which seemed wasteful, but that was between two choirs.
I think the first erot goes with Ubi Abba Sedebat. There was a place where the abbot was sitting. Mm-hmm. You're right. There's too many erots.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like the next, because you're thinking, well, isn't it the same erot?
Oh, that's a misprint. I'm sorry. I'm just checking. I've just copied it wrong, or it crept in. So it's Locus Vero erat ubi Abba Sedebat. Sorry, Locus Vero ubi Abba Sedebat, which is what you'd expect. Erat inter duos chorus. I apologize.
Okay. Okay. Well, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there began with the abbot a choir, and in him finished. And another choir similarly.
Yep.
Nobody from the furthest part was heard to resume to begin a word, save the aforementioned abbot.
Okay. This is no one from either part. That is to say, either of those two choirs.
Oh, I'm thinking ultra.
Right.
Yeah.
This is uterque, traque, trunque.
Air. Literally had dared to presume to begin, and this is a misprint. It's versum, not verbum, because they aren't talking. So they don't presume. No one dared to presume to begin a verse except the abbot.
Okay, I was wondering, why verbum?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Not in the monastery did any voice or any noise by the others anticipate, I'm assuming anticipate him?
The subject is aliquis. So no, not in the monastery did anyone undertake, praesumebat, any voice or any noise. Accusatives.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's just the basic.
Aliquis is nominative.
Sorry?
But isn't aliquis nominative?
Right. Aliquis is the subject.
Okay. I thought you said it was the object. Okay.
No,
yeah.
no. The objects are vocem and strepitum.
Okay, yes. Okay,
so This is just a great example of how Latin can just put things totally in the wrong order.
Right, right. Okay. Did anyone presume to... Oh, yeah, speak. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read down here. If something was necessary for some brother...
Good.
He went before the abbot and genuflected in his presence.
Good.
The postulant called on what was necessary in his heart.
Postulans is just, I think, the participle of postulo, asking in his heart.
Okay.
Or I guess it must be asking what necessity required in his heart. Or asking in his heart whatever necessity required.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was meant to be the subject or if it was just a present participle.
I think it's just the present part of postulo. I find the in corde suo kind of weird now that I think about it. Oh, I guess I did signal that in my notes. So I thought it was weird when I made the notes, and I still think it's weird how you can indicate something in your heart. Like,
well,
what does that mean? What?
I'm assuming it's because you can't speak.
Right.
So are they saying that like God reveals the needs of the brothers to the abbot without the brothers saying anything?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So it's like magic.
Yeah, it seemed to me that
miraculous.
this seemed to be their way of saying like telepathically almost.
Yes.
In Corbusuo.
Spock.
Like you're thinking about it really hard, and then the abbot gets it.
He's Spock.
It's those root vegetables will do it every time.
It's a broken thing.
Root vegetables of incredible flavor.
That's right.
They don't knock turnips. They have a lot of nutrients in them.
All right, class.
All right. Okay.
Onward.
Immediately the Holy Father, having accepted a writing tablet and stylus, through God's revelation, wrote and gave to the brother that which from him he sought counsel.
Okay, I would just like to point out that the brother could have avoided the telepathic request and simply gone to request by tablet, answer by tablet. Right? If it's a telepathic request, why not a telepathic answer?
Maybe they're not allowed to write the same as they're not allowed to speak.
Maybe they're illiterate.
Sure.
That is a possibility since they don't seem to be the
possible. Yeah.
Copying kind of monk, the singing kind of monk.
It's not a given that they would know how to write.
I still think it's strange.
Well, it's very strange. This whole island is strange.
Right. Whole island is. I keep wondering. I don't know. It's just an odd island.
What, this island is strange as opposed to the one with the talking birds?
Right.
I think this one is much stranger.
The birds are the fallen angels that they also are eating. I mean, they're eating fallen angels. Think about that.
Did they eat the birds?
No, they didn't.
Well, somebody was talking at some point earlier tonight about raw birds, eating raw birds.
Well,
I think different birds.
I was thinking when they were on the ocean. I wasn't talking about those. I wasn't talking about those white birds.
But how could you tell?
They were eating birds at all, right? They were eating birds on that modern voyage.
Yeah.
Right? If you watch that video, they got that guy from the Faroes who was catching birds and then cooking them.
At least he cooked them.
There's been nothing about what they ate at sea.
Right.
But
Except
one
that
thing
they did eat
Karen does chime in. Karen, this is the sort of thing that she knows and William and I don't, says Bina, distributives used where you'd expect cardinal numbers is characteristic of Insular Latin.
Okay.
So that twice two before the altar is sort of, you see that in Insular Latin.
All right, great. We now need a volunteer for 12.11.
I can do it.
Okay, great, Mike.
Let's see, 12:11. Cum autem Sanctus Brendanus haec omnia intra se consideraret. Now when St. Brendan had considered all these things, sort of like within himself, intra se, the abbot said to him, Pater, Father, it is now time that we return to the refectory or to the dining room in order that all things might be done cum luce, with daylight, or they might still have daylight.
Right, good. Before we go on, just one point. Consideraret is what tense?
It's imperfect subjunctive. But
so
shouldn't it be perfect
while they
subjunctive?
were considering.
Okay. Oh, okay. Were considering.
Okay, good. Keep going.
Wait, is that imperfect or?
It's imperfect, but it sounds like it ought to be imperfect in form, but in sense, should it be pluperfect?
Well, you could translate it.
I thought it was consider eraveret.
I thought it's just the imperfect.
No, that's not right either.
It's imperfect.
Yeah, you're right. It's the imperfect considera with cum, yes.
Right.
So when they were considering these things, the abbot said to him, "Father, it's turn." Okay.
Right.
So they wanted in daylight.
Right. So just as a matter of principle, I would keep. I mean, of course, you can translate it pluperfect if you want to be artistic or whatever, but I would just keep in my head that distinction between the ongoing action while he was thinking about these things, the abbot said to him, as opposed to the other way. I mean, another perfectly good way of saying it, when Brendan had considered it, then the abbot said. And I just think in Latin the distinction is so clear so much of the time that it's just, I think, helpful to just keep those two different categories separate in one's head if you can. Okay, onward. Et ita fecerunt?
And so they did in this manner, as ad refectionem, as for the meal, for eating.
Yeah, what does that mean exactly? I'm blanking out.
I think he means that they went back singing with the brothers in front and the abbot and Brendan behind.
As they were preparing for the meal, like for the meal or something. All things having been finished, of the course of the day, according to order. That's kind of awkward. So I'm like saying when all things of the day's course had been finished according to order.
Okay.
All were hurrying, festinavant, with great eagerness to compline.
William, do you want to talk about that cursus, which?
Oh right. I have the wrong note about that. I think I sent an.
Yeah, you did.
I have the wrong note. That really it should be it's genitive singular according to the order of the course of the day. Right?
Right, and the cursus is kind of a monastic technical term, meaning the prayers that you do on that day. So according to the order of whatever prayer we're supposed to do because it's a Wednesday or whatever day of the week it is. Remember, they do all at least in the Benedictine tradition, we do all the Psalms every week. Right. So on Wednesday we do this, and this.
Good.
Okay, so they've heard enough to compline. Vero Abbas, but the abbot, when he had begun the aforementioned versicle,
good.
That is, God intend or come to my aid, direct yourself to my aid, and they had given honor to the Trinity, simul, together. They were beginning to sing the versicle.
Good.
Saying, we have acted unjustly, we have done iniquity. You, who are a good or a pious father, spare us, Lord. I shall sleep and rest in peace in that itself. Quoniam, because you, Lord, have put me singularly in hope. Post text.
I think William puts for this very reason for ad ipsum in double question marks. I think that's right, and I think ad ipsum refers to everything for after quoniam. I will sleep and I will rest in peace in this knowledge, in this thing that you, God, so on.
Have placed you in hope, right? After these things, post hoc, they were singing the office which pertains to this hour. That is Compline.
Good. So what do we think id ipsum is? Just two words mashed together because...
In this itself?
In this itself, but...
Yes, it looks like two words mashed together to me, but I really don't know. I've never seen it before.
No, me neither. I couldn't find it.
Oh, I've seen it before.
Okay.
That's why it didn't bother me. Maybe I should have been bothered. Jen, is this familiar to you?
No.
Maybe it's just a medieval thing together.
And I think it is only and I think this is not. I haven't seen it declined. The expression ad ipsum is almost adverbial, the way ad tempus was a few pages ago.
Mm-hmm.
But is it ad ipsum? In my copy, it's printed id ipsum.
I'm sorry, ad id ipsum. My mistake.
Mm-hmm.
That's still not what I have. I have in id ipsum. So that's
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm getting it. I'm looking at a dictionary, talking at the same time, which is a bad idea. Multitasking, which means do more than one thing badly.
Could it refer to because you are a pious father and you spare us, something to that effect? I will rest and sleep in peace in that itself. It's just.
Well, I like Bruce's way of saying that it sets up the quoniam. I'll rest in
this itself.
In this thing, namely that. It's the where the word comes from that.
I know it's bizarre.
I can't find a word in a dictionary, but that's what Selmer prints. So at least it's not a misprint. Never mind. We can fool about that in our spare time too. Anybody want to volunteer?
In our massive amounts of spare time.
Sorry?
I said in our massive amounts of spare time in which we have nothing better to do.
Well, it is July.
Absolutely not.
Anybody want to volunteer for 12.12? Class.
I'll try.
Okay.
I'll do it. Oh.
Well, somebody
already got a volunteer, and I already did a bunch. You can go ahead.
Who was that volunteer? Was that you, Victoria?
I did.
Okay. Take it away.
Thank you, Victoria.
Now, with this order of the singing or of the psalms completed, all the brothers went outside to their single cells, taking the guests with them.
Good.
But the abbot with St. Brendan sat in the church, waiting for the coming of the light.
Good.
And St. Brendan questioned the Sacred Father about the silence of the group or of the men of them, and about conversazione, about their dealings with one another, about dealing
Good.
Or sort of in what way this might be possible among human flesh or for
Good.
human flesh.
In other words, how do you guys stand it?
Right.
But more politely put, probably.
Probably.
Very good.
And how can you eat all those roots?
Right.
Jen, you ready for 12.13?
Yeah, can I ad ipsum? I just looked this up in the online version of the Patrologia Latina, which is hundreds of volumes of medieval Latin texts. Ad ipsum is all over the place as one word, starting with Tertullian. I mean, id ipsum. Sorry, id ipsum. Thank you. Id ipsum. No, in this 160-something volume work, you find that almost 4,000 times. So it really means it's there a lot, and sometimes it's ad ipsum, as we've got it here. Sometimes it's, believe it or not, id in ipsum, cum in ipsum, or just plain, oh, here's an ob in ipsum, so it gets used a lot, and I think it probably all really means the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, excuse me.
Jen, 12.13.
Then the aforementioned father, with great reverence and humility, responded, Abbot, before my dear Christ, I confess. It's been 80 years since we came to this island. We have heard no human voice except when we sing praises to God.
Good.
Among us 24 people, a voice is not raised except through the sign of a finger or our eyes, and then only by those elder in birth.
Mm-hmm.
No one of us has sustained a weakness of the flesh or of their spirit, or of those spirits that wander around the human race after we came into this place.
Good.
Right. Just a side note on the signum digiti aut oculorum. Monastic sign language and gesture language is a thing, is a real thing. It was developed very elaborately in some monasteries, to the extent that one 12th century reformer remarked of some monastic practice that he'd never seen as big a crowd of blabbermouth gossiping hands in his life. So it became very elaborate and articulated.
Huh.
There's a nice little book about it.
Great. I haven't. That's so exciting. I don't know how to continue. 12. You should post. Send me that reference, Bruce. 12.14. Onward, Jen.
Okay. St. Brendan said, "Are we permitted to stay here now, or not?" And he said, "You are not permitted because it is not the will of God." "Why are you asking me, Father? Didn't God reveal to you that what is fitting for you to do before you had come to us here?
Mm-hmm.
For it is fitting for you, you should return to your own place with your 24 brothers. For there, God has..."
24?
There's 14.
I only have 14 printed here.
24. I might have missed. That might
Sorry,
be.
no, that was my fault. 14. I just read it wrong. For there, God has prepared a place for your burial. But those two who are superfluous, one will travel on the island which is called the Island of the Anchorites.
Mm-hmm.
Further, the second one will be condemned by a most terrible death among the people in the underworld.
Good. Yes.
So those two are the two extra monks that are left.
Yep.
So there were 3 extra monks and one died, and now there's 2 extra monks.
Yep.
And one of them is going to wander around on the island of the Anchorites,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is going to hell. That's good to know.
It's a little dark.
It would be a little bit nerve-wracking if you were one of the extra monks. You're like, oh man, flip a coin.
Ugh. Mona.
Okay, this is 12:15. Cum
Yes.
haec inter se talia loquerentur. And when they were speaking about these things, or literally these such things, talia, behold, with those men looking on, elis videntibus, a fiery arrow sent forth through the window, lit all of the torches, or lampades, the lamps which were placed before the altars.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really
pretty
cool.
awesome. which aforementioned arrow, or the aforementioned arrow, immediately returned for us outside.
Where's aforementioned?
Predicta Sagitta.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, this arrow immediately returned outside.
Yeah.
Tamen. However, the precious light remained behind in the lamps.
Good.
Again, Blessed Brendan asked, by whom, will the light be extinguished, Mane, in the morning?
Oh, so it was overnight. Okay.
The Holy Father. The Holy Father.
So it definitely hasn't burned continuously.
Hasn't gone out, or hasn't gone out until in the morning. The Holy Father said to him, Veni et vide, come and see the mystery, or maybe the sign of the thing, the Sacramentum Rei. We've seen that before, haven't we?
Yeah, I like mystery. I think Bruce taught us to translate that mystery.
Mystery, the mystery of the thing. Behold, you see the burning candles in the middle of the little vessels. Yet, nothing of those candles burns up.
Good.
So that they might be less, or they might become less, scent, or might grow smaller.
Good.
Nor will there remain in the morning any ash, because it's a spiritual light. And St. Brendan said, okay, this is very theological. I didn't expect this after the root vegetables, but how is an incorporeal light able to burn corporeally in a corporeal creature? The old man answered, have you not read about the burning bush on Mount Sinai? And yet, that bush itself remained unharmed by the fire. In Lesus, unharmed.
Right. Perfect.
Right. One thing, candelas, yep, it means candles, but it can also very confusingly, starting as early as the 7th century, mean lamps. And this is really clear because it taught that their phrase is talking about collecting or refilling the oleum in the candelas. You don't do that with candles. So candles here actually means as if these lights aren't giving us enough trouble already.
First they're luminaria, now they're candelas.
Yeah, the corporale creatura, that's a corporeal creature in the sense of meaning anything created, and since all things are created by God, so we're not actually saying that the lamp's an animal. We're saying it's a created thing.
Right.
I hadn't thought about that. Yes. Good. I forgot there's another little chunk on 1216. Do you want to do that, Mona?
Sure. And then e vigilantibus, with them keeping vigil, totam noctem, the entire night until the morning, or when they had kept vigil that entire night until morning. St. Brendan asked leave proficiscendi for setting out on his own journey.
Good.
The old man said to him, no, no, Father, you must celebrate the Nativity of the Lord, and it's our Christmas, with us until the octave of the Epiphany. Therefore, the Holy Father stayed sua familia with his own community the aforementioned time, that is till the octave of Epiphany, with the 24 fathers on the island which is called the island of the community of Alba, or Alba.
Good. Excellent.
Look at that. We got through a big chunk.
Whoa, good for us.
So these guys have all been on an island for 80 years. They're all, what, a century old?
Just about.
Probably.
Wow.
Think how wise they must be.
And they're not getting any older.
Right.
Mhm.
We better go and search for this island.
Absolutely.
Probably someone has.
Oh yes, that's a whole other thing. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
This is great work. Thank you.
This was a particularly great week, I think. We got through a lot.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we move fast. Sometimes we have to argue and talk and
Discuss root vegetables.
and theology. Don't forget theology.
I so wish it could be a potato. You know what you?
I know. I'm
No,
thinking
not a potato.
Irish potatoes, but they weren't
Yes.
Irish yet.
Not a potato.
All right, class. On that cheerful note, have a lovely week.
You too.
You too.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. See you next
Vale
week.
te omnes.
See you next week. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.